unmute. Oh, sorry. Recording. All our lines will be in mute. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please do type those in the chat box. We do monitor them and we check them, and we will do our best to address as many as we can by the end of the session. We do have a quick session evaluation at the end of the session, but also please feel free to share your ideas of future topics in the chat box. It's really helpful for us thinking about speakers to bring in for the next year. So if there's topics that you're dying to know about, let us know. We'll do our best to see if we can find a good speaker for that topic for you. I do want to move on to introducing our speaker. Many of you already know Steve Barley, and he's an SCN member for many years. But if you didn't know some of his background, he has quite an impressive background. Over 20 years of experience, and he's held a number of positions in the area of corporate training, talent management, and executive leadership. He was at one point working as the Associate VP of Talent Management for Canadian Tire, FGL Sports, and Marks. He also is a certified Success Finder practitioner and does a lot of EIEQ kind of work. I just was talking to Steve about this. He's also released a book, and you can find it on Amazon. It's called Being a Better Human. And he's also releasing one. He's also released one also about being a better teenager as well. So he's an author, a coach, a leader extraordinaire. And today he's going to be talking to us about sort of how we can engage more in the sort of online world. And I think, it's certainly the future, and I'm excited to hear about it. Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you to guide us and take us along.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. It's hard to live up to the extraordinaire title, I just want to say thank you. But very good to be here. I think the last time I spoke to the network was at SATE, and I believe that was like 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm currently Vice President of Leadership Assessment and Development for a company called Optimum Talent. We're a Canadian talent management organization. We have approximately 14 offices across the country, and we specialize in 3 areas. We do executive search, career transition. We currently work with a number of organizations that are maybe offboarding employees or they're doing some redeployment. And then I'm responsible for the leadership assessment and development, and but for Western Canada though. So I'm really Manitoba West, but primarily Alberta and BC. And really, I've had some great experiences since COVID started. And the goal today is I wanted to share some of the practices that I've experienced and failed miserably on, and had some successes. And I want to really have a discussion. So what I've done, and you'll see this momentarily, is I'm going to share some of the experience that I've had, but I want to also get some information from everybody. So I'm going to use some different tools and ways to engage everybody. So if you're okay with that, that'd be great. Just one ground rule is please interrupt me if you have any questions. Don't worry about using chat. Just unmute and just ask me a question. I'd rather it be a conversation, honestly, than a presentation. It's so much nicer, as I'm sure all of you know, when you're doing one of these and people are asking you questions or engaged. So I'm looking forward to it. So if we're good with that, I'll start sharing. I'm going to unshare some presentations and so on, and got some information. So give me a sec. So hopefully you can see my first slide there. And just give me a second. I'm going to manipulate my screen a little bit. So today, really going to be talking about engagement online, and I'm focusing really a little bit on learning and development. However, everything I'm talking about applies for any type of session you're doing. As a volume metric, I'm probably delivering about 5 to 8 sessions a week now on average. And sometimes multiple sessions, like 2 or 3 in a day. And so it's been fascinating compared to, let's say, February of 2020, where we delivered virtually none online. So went from, 0 to 1,000 miles per hour in the past year, and seeing an incredible increase in um, demand for this type of engagement or these types of online sessions. And I've got some pretty interesting stats I'll share with you. Another thing that is quite interesting about my company, Optimum Talent, is that we are actually a division of a company called Gallagher Benefits. Gallagher is an international organization with 33,000 employees, headquartered out of Chicago. But I have access now to some incredible data and data points, and to understand what's going on with a lot of organizations across the world. So I think you'll find that kind of interesting too. So let's move forward. Um, Today, really wanted to talk about a couple of things. Really talking about online engagement, of course. I want to share some better and best practices, and I call them best practices because they don't work for everybody. A best practice might be great for one organization, might not work for another. So it's about understanding what the difference. I'm calling it crash and burn. I was trying to be funny, um, but hey, I crashed and burned yesterday. So I want to just share something with you that was kind of funny. I think the timing was impeccable. Talk about moving forward. I've got some data on what that might look like, and then some surprising interest in information about the opportunities that have arisen that honestly did not were not available prior to COVID, and I think are going to continue as we move forward. Sorry here. So today I have a goal, and it's really just let's talk about the current state of development, and once again identify some of those best practices as we go through. Um, so for today, just a game plan for us. Please use your camera if you can. Um, as a facilitator or presenter, I like to see people's faces and see whether I'm off target or on target. It always helps me a little bit. We've got some breakout rooms I'm going to put you into, and I'll find ways to force you to work together. And I feel like I can talk differently to the audience here because I know you all do this. And but use chat and audio, but please, use the audio to get through. That would be really nice. One of the sessions that I'm doing a lot of right now is on mental health and wellness. We call it workplace emotional health, and um, we're delivering something called Caring for Yourself. It's a 90-minute workshop with the idea of reframing mental health and calling it mental fitness. And with the goal that people understand they might have some challenges with mental health and what they can do proactively to make some changes. So I've kind of interwoven this into this presentation today. And what I always like to do is to start off with this poll because I want to get people engaged immediately. Um, and so I'm gonna set this up for us. I'm very curious to see how you're doing. The terminology we're using here represents a continuum that we've identified for mental health, and it's you're either thriving, things are going well, it's a great day, your productivity is off the charts, you're doing well, it's an okay day, you're getting through. Coping is you're just waiting for the end of the day to happen, or you're waiting for Friday, or whatever day. And then, of course, the last one, you're challenged. It's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be at work. So I'm gonna launch this poll. I'm kind of curious to see um, how you feel. And thank you, Carla, for setting up the polling. So if you don't mind, I'd like to get some. And I'm always really curious because I do this all the time. So we're actually starting to look at the trending. And looks like everybody has responded. So I'm going to share those results with you. And you know what I think is, for me, it's fascinating just because I like the data component of this. It's almost always the same. And with, we do this with major organizations with hundreds of people. A lot of people doing well, very few people are thriving and not a lot are challenged, but that whole middle cluster is there. So when it comes to online engagement, I find polls just is a great way to immediately get some engagement. It's pretty quick to do. And what it allows me to do is kind of gauge what's going on in your organization. So honestly, before COVID, I would never use polls. I just thought it was like an extra little tool I needed to manage. Now I use them frequently, and we've got some others that we're going to do. So let me get back to my presentation here. So what I wanted to do now is really talk about kind of current situation. So I'm giving you my perspective, what I'm experiencing, and also prior to this session, I did speak to a number of the people that do provide facilitation or online engagement across our network here to get their feeling and their impact as well. So first thing is, really, we started calling it like the new normal, and then the next normal, and now I think we're calling it the never normal. And as a matter of fact, I was just listening to the radio, and they had a speaker from Ryerson University in Toronto talking about what the new workplace is going to look like. And I can tell you from my understanding here in Calgary, and I am in the office today, just simply because I wanted to make sure I had good connectivity for the session. But it's starting to get busier here. Some companies are coming back at the end of the month. Enbridge, for example, all the directors and above are coming back full time. Suncor in Calgary is coming back first week of September, but they don't know what it's going to look like yet. So there's a lot going on, and this whole online engagement, it's here. It's not changing. I honestly think that the days of having face-to-face engagement, it's still going to happen, but I think there's going to be less of it. I think there's going to be more, and I have a reason for that, and I'll talk to you about the end. But it's dramatic how quickly this has changed and how disruptive we are. So some things I've heard, we've been doing this for 15 months now, and my biggest fear has been hearing these comments. Oh, the session is dry. I'm tired of Zoom. I still hear that, of course. I don't want to be part of the discussion. I just want to hide. I like the face-to-face, and people just want to sit and disengage. Well, what I'm finding now is there are some criteria that will almost guarantee that your sessions will be effective online, as long as you set up that criteria in advance. So I think, anyways, I think you're going to find it interesting and I'm very interested to get, of course, hear what you have to say too and what your personal experiences are. Here's some interesting data that we've been capturing, and just around online development. There are people tired of it. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that lots of technology issues. Yes, even yesterday, and I've got some screen captures to show you. We were recording a session for the YWCA, and which I can share, and it's going live on Thursday. And we had a ton of technical issues, just simply because the speakers that came into the session couldn't log on to this particular platform. So anyway, it was kind of interesting. We're noticing too that people just don't participate in online. They'll kind of disengage, or you can tell, they're doing email or something like that. And then not 32% not effective. Now we're trying to change that by doing different things, but this is all of the data I'm sharing with you today, by the way, is information that we've captured as we've done these many sessions. We have I'm going to say about 50 facilitators, approximately 40 to 50 facilitators across the country who do various types of online engagement. So this is to be just one example of it. So I wanted to share some better and best practices, and absolutely, this is it really is learning in progress, and we're continuously updating everything we're doing just to make sure that we're on top of our engagement. You know, in our business, clients engage us to deliver leadership programs, career transition. Um, as a matter of fact, we also do, let's say, career transition virtually as well. So, unfortunately, letting people go online, which is a challenge, of course, but it's something that we are doing much more of. And so I'm going to share some of that stuff with you. So I like this is a really, to me, a great slide. And what we're trying to do with all of our online engagement is create this concept of a psychologically safe environment where people are going to share and they feel comfortable sharing. I can tell you from personal experience that I used to hate that when you get into a big like online thing and they say, "Hey, does anybody have any questions?" And it goes silent for minutes, right? Um, so one of my coworkers, Dr. Mike Musso, he's a neuroscientist and works here in Calgary, and this is really how it's defined. So everything we do, this is an overlay of everything we do. So anytime we're doing something, it's about how do we create that environment where people feel comfortable participating, and we have some techniques that we like to engage in. The first one, and is something called the Farazi Greenlight Trust model. Has anybody maybe heard of this or seen it? Or, oh, good. Well, you can use it because it's public domain. It's not. Um, so it's a fantastic model. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have probably maybe used the Patrick Lencioni model, the five dysfunctions of a team, or heard of that one as well. This one I think is really resonates with people. And what we're trying to do in a psychologically safe online environment is create a trusting relationship or environment, and you're trying to do it in 10 minutes. So um, if you look at this model, you can see where it's progressive. So it starts off with generosity, and this is showing people that you care about what you're going to be doing, how you engage them. Second part is intimacy. So this is me being vulnerable and sharing information about you, talking about the mistakes I made, being really honest about some of the challenges that I'm technically having when it comes to this topic. Um, Candor. So being honest and telling it, and hopefully we can increase that. And the last one, of course, is accountability. This model is designed for business, and it really, if you look at it, break it into two sections. You've got this emotional foundation component, and then this business focus component. So the generosity, intimacy is something that you overlay once again with everything you do. The second part is, yeah, you're candid and you're accountable, and you you're showing that you're accountable for what you're doing. I don't know if any of you ever been in a session, but I know I've been into many workshops where the facilitator is not necessarily being completely honest about their personal experience. They only talk about the great stuff that happened, and I just think one of the best ways to do it is this. So here's this model, and if you look it up, you'll find there's lots of information on it. And I am going to share the slide deck, by the way. After the session, I'll send it out to Carla, and Carla can give to you so you can reference it. But something to consider. So first, it's that psychological safety piece that you want to make an environment where people are going to talk. Second is how do we get the trust going? And one of the ways to get the trust going is to be intimate, and that's why I use the poll. Even though I don't know who's responding to the poll, how you feeling today, you just kind of get a sense of how the group is, and you've done something immediately together as a group. Um, absolutely, this is a challenge. This environment is a challenge. There's so many issues with trying to do things virtual, the interpersonal component. Um, I've even read there's lots of studies going on right now that your brain even has a hard time connecting the screen that we see with the voice sometimes. So, and if any of you have ever done a session, I just found it curious about hands up. I like the hands up part because it's just a little bit easier, or the thumbs up if you want. But if you've ever done a session with more than approximately 40 people, when you've got multiple screens as a facilitator, you can't even see everybody. So it's really, really challenging. I mean, I've done a lot with about 80 to 90, And honestly, it's a challenge. I find it challenging. So we use Zoom primarily for all of our virtual connections. We use Teams as well, not for anything like this. We use a product called we use WebEx, Cisco WebEx, which I'm not personally a big fan of. It's pretty cumbersome, doesn't work very well. And we use something called ON24. And ON24 is more for these large, massive webinars that we're starting to do more of. So always in the back of my mind, I'm figuring out, okay, so what can I do to make sure I interact effectively? So here's, polls. We did a poll, and I just find it's been invaluable for me to use polls. And I just find that as I capture the data, I often share it back with the group throughout the session. And it allows me also to be agile. Before we started the session, we were talking about agility and how important it is to be agile when you're doing anything online these days. I've found that by doing polls, it's allowed me sometimes to redirect how I'm going to talk, or redirect what topics I'm going to use. I find myself sometimes quickly, pushing through a slide because I'm not going to use that slide anymore based on the poll. Not a fun scenario, but anyways, it can be good. So I use polls effectively. So I'm curious. Another poll. I'm going to launch this in a second. Just want to know what have been some of the big challenges you've had and you've experienced. I'm going to stop sharing here because I want to see those faces. So maybe let me know. Okay, that's good. There we go. Almost there.
Steve, can you clarify what's the difference between participant engagement and participation?
You can kind of force participation by doing polls, but the engagement is how they actually respond in open conversations. I kind of see it two separate ways. Okay, so I think you're going to be surprised, maybe not. Here we go. Let's take a look at these results. So engagement is around when for me, it's around when I'm talking to the big room and I ask for people to participate, who steps up. And I was looking for people's eyes, so you can kind of tell. Technology, that's good. So really, probably the suggestion is we're past that phase. I mean, we still have lots of challenges, but it's just a given. Participation, of course, is within when we do a breakout room. And I really do measure those two differently. Pre-work, always a challenge, and post-work, no challenges there. And of course, building content. So that's good. That's good. So we're going to talk about all of these different areas in a second. I've been talking a lot so far. Any questions at all or comments?
I have a question, actually. I've tried let's try to turn on our camera. We're sort of setting that expectation, but a lot of times you still get nothing happens, and no one turns it on. And from a facilitator point of view, like you said, it's just so hard. It's like you're talking to your computer. It feels really strange, and it's just a different level of even your own engagement in the process. And Kathleen said it's bandwidth issues. Yeah, I do agree. Sometimes it's a bandwidth issue for sure, but it can't be bandwidth issue for everyone. So, and I understand that, even when I'm teaching in class, I do keep that in mind. But when I'm speaking with people casually and friends, they're like, yeah, I don't want to turn it on. I just don't want to. I want to be kind of anonymous and just be there, not engaging. Is there anything you think that, is there any ways you find you can encourage people more, maybe to turn it on, or maybe in future sessions to be prepared to turn it on, etc.?
Well, usually what we try to do, and I know we didn't do it for this session, but if we're working with an organization in advance, we'll have an idea. Maybe culturally, it's an organization that they don't use their cameras, but we'll send it out as in advance as a expectation that everybody's going to have their camera on. The one thing that I've been doing that works well for me is when we finish a breakout room, I like to circle back and get to the main room and ask questions. I usually pick the people that don't have the cameras on to give me feedback, and then they actually then open up their cameras. So I do that. Yeah, it's hard. I'm looking at my my goofy hair, and it's really hard to watch yourself talk, but it's quite a challenge. And in some cases for organizations, we absolutely require it. And it's not even we do some work with some of the big banks in Canada here, and it's like, yeah, you're not going to be part of the session unless you put your camera on. So I know it seems harsh, but we've established that in advance with the people who are coordinating the session, and it's. But thank you for that question. It's a great one.
How do you find, Steve? This is Mike speaking. So we're from an organization where, like Brenda mentioned, it's not typical that they necessarily have their cameras on, and there's just different perceptions around it. And then kind of within that same vein, what are your thoughts on, you mentioned that you will call people out like from name sometimes, but also a lot of the meeting and a lot of the relationship building occurs outside of the actual meeting content. Like it's the beforehand when you're like, oh, hey, how's it going? How's your weekend? It's the afterhand when you're walking to the elevator and going down together. So how do you build that like in more virtual environments as well?
That's a great question. So we actually, next week, you're more than welcome to attend. I'll send the invite. We're doing something in Alberta with CPHR on succession management, diversity and inclusion. And so what we've done now is we've included about 10 minutes in advance for people to chat. And as the facilitator, I actually ask people questions and I kind of engage in a conversation. So that's one thing that's, it's worked really well. And it's kind of fun to, we don't have to be all business all the time. It's nice to talk about a subject, and, I usually bring up a subject, see how anybody else is, especially now with mental health. And we talk about that a lot, where we've introduced the concept of a mental health moment now before most of our meetings, or almost all of them internally. So we all share what we're doing for mental health. And my big thing is, I'm laughing because I've become a bird watcher. So it's like a brand new thing for me. And I have an app called Song Sleuth, and I can record bird sounds and it tells me what the bird is. So, out in the woods, people are looking like, what are you doing? So we just kind of get people to talk and in advance. And I think, and I constantly mention it too throughout the session, that, hey, put your cameras on. It'd be great to see everybody's face. The other thing that I think helps too is when we do the breakout rooms, it helps to break down some of the barriers within the rooms. So I'm a huge advocate of breakout rooms, by the way. I find that's been so incredibly helpful, regardless of the size. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks. Let me ask you a question. So in your organization, is it just a cultural thing where people don't use their cameras, or is it just no expectations for any of the meetings at all? Or?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with a few friends because I was completing some education as well, and they were consultants working for other companies. And they said that particularly when they work with my company, it's just common knowledge that nobody puts their cameras on in a meeting. So like people will talk, the engagement's like still very high, but I found it's not uncommon for me to be the only one with my camera on in an entire meeting room right now. I found actually, funnily enough, that it has really improved my relationships a lot. Like I think because no one else has their camera on, they naturally just ask me like questions during the meeting more. And so it's definitely been a game changer for me to have it on, even if I'm the only one. But Culturally, it's still very, very rare in my organization of it, but others I know have done a fantastic job encouraging it. I've been on calls with companies like ATD or WestJet or Benevity where all of them have their cameras on right away, even if they're not talking or participating. So it's different.
That's a great point. And we have an organization we do work with that's Canadian wide, and they had a culture of not necessarily using their cameras. But what we ended up doing in this case is we asked the CHRO to send out a note saying, look, I know you normally don't use your cameras, but if you really want to engage and get the most out of this, we need to see everybody's faces. So that getting that support from senior executives also helps too. And then having senior executives on the call who put the camera on, that's actually been a big thing for us. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me just start sharing again. I'll tell you, this is, I think, I never used to use these really before, but this has been a real big game changer for me when it comes to, and I'll try to get a sample to everybody on what it looks like. For everything we do now, we have a workbook. And in this case, it's 8 pages. So workbook, like work document, let's call it. And this screen capture is of an official document that we use. We send it out the day in advance. There's no expectations to do any pre-work. It's just to be used as a follow along as we're going through the session. So when I do the breakout rooms, I have people open up their workbooks and do work in it. That has increased engagement dramatically for us. Whereas before everything was kind of open-ended, you go into a room and start talking. Now this workbook, I'll give you an example. You can kind of see the inside of it. So this is an actual workbook from our workplace emotional health session that we do quite a lot. And it's quite simple. It references some of the slides in the presentation. And it also has you'll see this activity. So we ask people to do a 30-day mental health fitness strategy. So I'm finding it, and I honestly rarely did this before. We used to just print. When I was doing in classroom stuff, I'd print like a document, print the PowerPoint and maybe add a couple of slides in there. Whereas I find this has been really, really, really helpful. So I can certainly get us up. If for those of you who are doing it, I mean, you know the impact, but it allows me when we do the break rooms to reference people back to this particular, and it creates that engagement. But I definitely don't. I have never had luck asking for pre-work to be done. Maybe 10% go and do it, but the keeners will go and maybe read something, but I just haven't had a lot of luck with that. So I feel like I'm always, pushing rope up a hill when I keep asking for pre-work. It's just don't do it anymore. And especially now, even this morning, we were talking to somebody and there's just like this overall level of exhaustion that people are feeling. It's like, not another thing to do before the meeting, so maybe we're giving up, but I think this has worked out quite well. And we have focused on the design of it to make it look good and so on. This is an example of that's a slide, the refueling yourself. And I was laughing because I see on the 16th, there's a session with SCN using the terminology. But this is an example of what it looks like. And I use multiple breakout. We're going to do a couple of breakout rooms today. Multiple breakout rooms. My experience, 4 to 5 people in a room has been perfect to do. And typically I find I don't give enough time for people to participate. But in this exercise, we were asking people to talk about, what refuels your energy level. So I am all in on breakout rooms, and I manage them myself. I do random. I like the random aspect of it. I don't necessarily like the preset breakout rooms that sometimes clients will ask us to do, unless it's really required. So this is an example of it. When I do breakout rooms, I always have a debrief afterwards, and I set the expectation in the breakout rooms that I'm going to pick somebody from a room, I don't ask them to identify a spokesperson. I just say I'm going to pick somebody. So I have the room list. I just find it's a lot easier that way. And you know, I do capture that data, and there's times there's silence, but I get used to the silence part of it, and just, you know, uh, prepare that way. So I've definitely been leveraging the breakout room piece. You know, in that 90-minute session that I deliver, I'll have 3 breakout rooms typically, and I capture the data. And we've had some incredibly dynamic discussions in breakout rooms, and just some as far as better and best practices, been just fantastic to do that. Next one is around this is around the technology, but this is maybe me, but I find that I recently did a session where the organization wanted to be in charge of the slides and everything in the rooms, and it was an absolute disaster because the person didn't know how to make the rooms work, and it was a major part of it. So anyways, I don't do that anymore. I do review the chat if possible. You know, I use that random function for breakout rooms, and I like to see who's coming in. Carla, of course, is taking care of people coming into the room, but I do that. And you know, it, we sometimes will have a producer that for some of the sessions, but I do it. I prefer to do it myself as much as possible. I do make mistakes, of course, and but usually they're not too recognizable. But taking control is an important part for me as a facilitator, and doing anything online is really important. This is a new thing for me, but it's really important, setting the stage. And this is really around what you see. And I'm wearing a shirt with a collar today. And you know, I am in the office. I normally would have a background, and I'm normally working from home. Just saying. But I've invested at home in a good mic and a good camera. And you know what I've done recently is I've actually set up my own background. And you see a lot of people doing this. This is not a new thing, but I find it's really worked for me for my brand. So you can kind of, this is a real picture of you know, my my area, my work office, and I've just identified some books. I got the Optimum Talent brand in the background. And for those of you who are, you know, consulting, you know, I often get questions about, oh, I see, you know, like that friend, my friend wrote the book, Your Best Work. And they'll, hey, might start a conversation, or, you know, you can't really tell, but that's Colonel Sanders there, that in the middle. And I've always admired Colonel Sanders for his starting his business at like 62 or 63 years of age. And I heard he was a tyrant, but just love the fact that he was able to, you know, demonstrate such agility and adversity. So anyways, I would suggest, I just did this about 2 months ago. Before, I used to use the backgrounds, you know, the virtual backgrounds, and I looked like a ghost coming in and out. And, you know, it's just, I don't know. I saw what I was watching sports or watching news. You realize that a lot of people are doing this, and they keep changing it up all the time, which is kind of interesting. They change up their backgrounds. One of the games that we've started playing is What's New in My Background. And so we move stuff around, add things, and we get together on Thursday mornings as the team. And it's like, hey, what do you see that's new in there? So you get them to look at it. So just a suggestion when it comes to your personal brand, I would definitely do this. Always, I create accountability teams, because everything we do, there's going to be a takeaway. So I create accountability teams using the breakout rooms. And I require people to go and, for example, when we do this as a group today, we'll probably do 4 in the room, and I do a follow-up. So, you know, I'm just really personally invested in that there's an action item or an action plan at everything that we do. This has actually worked quite well. And what it does, if you use the random selection for breakout rooms, people meet new people in the organization. So anyways, just a suggestion. It's not a new idea once again, but I absolutely, everything I do, I have an accountability partner for it. So I either have an accountability partner or an accountability team, or a triad. What I mean, but I leave some flexibility there, but my expectation is that when they're in a break room, they're going to work with them after the session. Even if it's one follow-up session or even a call, that's fine. I definitely like to do that. So enough talk about breakout rooms and everything. I thought we would do one, and I'd love to get some information from you. So I'm going to set up a breakout room in a second, and I'm curious to hear what kind of techniques you may have used during some of your facilitation, to increase engagement. So I'll set up the rooms, and I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. I'm going to set up the rooms, and when you're in the rooms, I'm going to send you a couple of messages. I'm going to let you know when there's a certain amount of time available. I'll give you a 5-minute warning and a 2-minute warning. And my expectation is that when we come back, I'm just going to reach out to some of the rooms and ask you to share a couple of items that you heard in your room, and let's have a conversation. So are you all good with that? Good, thumbs up, the thumb graph, great. It's easier just to take a thumb up, I find. Okay, I'm gonna set up the breakout rooms now. And so one room will have 5, the other should have 4. And okay, so you don't need to organize within the room, just I'll have a conversation. Once again, what are some of the techniques that maybe you've utilized to increase engagement in anything you've done online? That could be a meeting, could be a learning session, no matter what it is. What can you do to help improve engagement? So I'm going to open up the rooms now, and I'll talk to you shortly. Absolutely. Listening or noticing all the chat about distractions, so I absolutely agree. It's such a new thing, and it's like, oh god, I'm looking at myself again for like 8 hours a day or so on. But thank you. So as promised before, I'm just going to reach out, and I'd love to hear what people heard in your rooms. And I'm just once again going random. I usually look for the people that are highly engaged looking at me with everybody's on, but I'm not gonna do that. But if I can go into room 1, Lauren Linnell, do you mind sharing?
I don't mind at all. We had a great chat.
Cool.
All kinds in 2 different groups and different settings. So some of the tips, we all agreed that breakout rooms are it. You must use them. We all, one of the tips I heard was actually putting a grid of the participants into a textbook onto a slide, and then having them answer a question, maybe starting with something social, and then doing a screenshot of that and sending that to the participants afterwards. So you've got a live capture, which I thought was brilliant.
That's a really good.
Another one was putting having a map up, when this is over, where do you want to travel? And putting a stamp, using the stamp to do that. These are all Zoom functions. We agreed Zoom was it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I've tried everything else, and a lot of it is pretty cumbersome. If anybody uses, nothing against Cisco WebEx, but it's really bulky. It takes up so much bandwidth. And
yeah,
it's,
some of those seems like they're all about the talking head. They're not necessarily about engagement. So yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thanks, Lauren. I'll go to the next room. How about Mike?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Steve. So Edmund, Diane, Lena, and myself were talking a little bit about different techniques. Someone brought up like Stormboard or Miro or different large boards where everyone can participate at once, and saw a lot of success with that. And then the group kind of talked about how you need to start off with high engagement at that high level and then continue it throughout the session. Like it can be very hard if you allow people to disengage at the front, then you switch to like a participation section, and it's hard to kind of pull people back in. So trying to maintain it where you can. And then as uncomfortable as it might seem, putting people on the spot, like even using names and just asking people, oh, so-and-so, like, what do you think? Or, oh, Glenna, like, what do you think about that? And kind of just tossing names out there is a really effective way to kind of drive that engagement. And typically you don't have to do it more than once, because once you do that and you kind of set the expectation that, it's not an option not to engage, then I think people generally join in after that fact.
That's a good one. I mean, that's why I'm writing the names down of people who respond, so I won't come to you twice.
Perfect.
So I know in your room too, and I won't come back to you again. How about room 3, Lena?
I need to unmute it, and I'll put my camera on too.
Okay.
Well, we did just discuss what rooms 1 and 2 already discussed. Some of the things we mentioned as well were, first of all, creating the safe space. So maybe as the presenter yourself, saying something that you're sharing one of your own experiences so that others are more willing to share. We also, along a similar line of asking questions before putting people into the breakout room, or doing a poll so that they get some thinking
Excellent.
about a topic before they go into the breakout room. And also maybe seeding question or an answer. So if you have a relationship with someone who's already attending the session and that they have a story to share, to draw on those people to share their story, and then that will prompt other people to open up a bit more.
That's very good.
And we also talked a bit about the benefit of the chat feature, of how that allows people to collect their thoughts before they communicate what they want to say, and it also doesn't disrupt the presentation. And you can, and it just opens it up a bit for engagement.
That's very good. And I'm looking at, I've got the chat open, of course, on my screen here, and I'm looking at, and which has been in. I love when people get engaged that way, and I try to encourage people to respond. I find it hard sometimes, to be honest, though. It's hard to get people to, but that's the job to make it happen. So I'll go to the last room, room 4, and before I go, the other Lena, Lena, I will ask you next time. So as I said, Lena, I said, oh, there's 2 Lenas, and hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. How about Glenna in room 4?
Okay, well, we had a lot of interesting discussion. Let's see, we found that polls were definitely a way to get people engaged. And I didn't take notes here, so I'm trying to get back and pick up on everything.
It's okay.
Yeah, one of the comments that came up was that if you have a chat, don't let the chat take over and distract from the main presenter.
Oh, that's good.
So
that's an excellent point. And I remember I took a course at a university, and that chat was so busy. It was incredible that we, it became a challenge, actually, just because you stop listening to the speaker and you're just reading the chat, and so that's good.
Maybe if I could just build on that briefly, Steve, because I was at university too, and we had a very similar thing happen. And one of our professors was new to the Zoom virtual environment, but just had their PowerPoint up and just ran through it consistently. But like you said, the chat was absolutely exploding with very, very insightful dialogue and everything. And I think as facilitators, like Glenna says, not only controlling that, but also building that in. If there's that much passion around a topic, then stop the conversation, realize that your PowerPoint slides probably aren't doing it, and switch to the conversation on the chat, right? Try to be adaptable as well, and meet people where they're at, because oftentimes I was quite upset that we weren't able to pull the conversation from the chat into the class, because it was a lot more engaging than some of the slides that we saw.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the word adaptable here. And I think as all facilitators, that's the key, moving forward. I just now, one thing that's great, I find, I don't know about everybody else here, I love people to chime in. Because of the platform, it's a little bit easier to be more adaptable, because I've got all these resources spread out in front of me that I can access immediately. So I just don't know how people feel about that, but and please chime in if you feel comfortable. But okay.
I also find it really helps to have a second screen.
Absolutely.
and one of them that is really big.
Yeah. Well, I've got 3 screens, and
Okay.
of course, and I'd love to have like one more. I don't know. I don't know. And I remember working at when I worked at Enbridge, and I thought, why would I ever need more than one screen? Now, I could never work with just one screen anymore. Of course, it's my eyesight. That's kind of gone. But next, I'll be like this, just trying to read the screen, and I'll look pretty goofy with Zoom. But you get okay, cool. Well, let me thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I got a couple more breakouts that we're going to do, but let me go back into share mode here. And yeah, I just want to share some real examples of me having big challenges, and or some of the things I've experienced as I've seen it, and how that I know I've had to adapt over a short period of time. So for sure, Zoom fatigue. I'm hearing that quite often these days. However, I don't think there's a ton of option. One of the ways that I've found to eliminate or to minimize Zoom fatigue, keep the session shorter. I mean, back in the old days, you do like an 8-hour session on leadership development, on communication, and you'd still have more content at the end of the day to go through. Then now we went to 3 hours like last year, and now we're nothing over 90 minutes. We're doing 60 to 90 minutes max. I'm doing quite a lot of 30-minute sessions now. I mean, who would have ever thought that would be the way like 2 years ago? You'd like, wow, like so. That's absolutely overly complicated slides, way too much text and content. That's not a new thing. The interaction part, so I think it's up to me to make sure I can get that going. But the session's too long, there's no takeaways. And I know there was some mention of some collaboration apps that have worked out well. Some collab apps don't always work well depending on the audience. So for example, we just recently did something with a very large company where the computer skills were not that high. And it was really a challenge to go through. And so we're trying to, in this case, it's an app that it's like a Post-it note app where it's for strategic planning, and you write a note and it goes up into it's a board collaboration concept. But it really failed miserably, just simply because of the technology skills that the people who are attending. The other thing too is we're doing more sessions where not everybody has a computer. So and they're in a big room. That I don't know if anybody's tried to do that. That's a real challenge, where you've got a room opened up to the session. Maybe there's 6 or 7 or 8 people. You can't tell who's talking. So we just recently we had a client like that where in the first meeting we did, they came to a boardroom, and then we required them to stay at their desks. In this case, this is an organization that was working in the office. Not checking tech. I mean, it goes, but this actually happened yesterday. I had to take a screenshot of this. So this is that's a screenshot, and we were recording a session yesterday that's going to be launched on Thursday, and it's with YWCA and something called Mindfulicity. And we're expecting about 500 people to attend. Are registered right now. But so we're recording this thing, and one person lost their Wi-Fi. The other person didn't get their audio fixed. I mean, thank goodness it wasn't real time. Like it, and we ended up having to record it a second time because you can't pause and record. And but it's a real life. But here we are. It's like a year and a half later. This is not a new platform. We use this platform all the time. This is more of like an enterprise-wide delivery platform that's got lots of pretty cool functionality. So anyways, literally just happened yesterday. I was kind of laughing to go, oh my goodness. And just the main, the MC or the moderator lost connectivity 3 minutes into the session. And then I get a chat note. Okay, Steve, can you take over? It's like, what? I don't think I can take over. Like, I guess I'll say yes, but I certainly wasn't prepared. So anyways, it was an interesting time. Yeah, the one size fits all solution. Honestly, every time we do something, we modified accordingly depending on the group, the culture, because we know in advance what's going to work. One of our primary questions is, are you currently doing anything online right now, and what's the engagement like? Because there are a lot of organizations who just will do meetings, webinars, where there's no interaction. And anyways, just a note I thought you might be interested. So the question, I guess, is, this has become a very important part of what we do, is knowing your participants and what are some of the challenges. I've mentioned a couple of the challenges that I've experienced, but I'd love to hear some of the challenges that you've seen. So I've got a couple, that I've written down. How technically savvy is the audience? Do they have a culture where they will talk? And we talk about the cameras quite a bit. Do they actually have computers? We're actually being requested to do this work for people who don't have computers. And are there any specific access issues at all? So I'd like to do just one more, like a quick breakout room, 2 questions I'd like to pose. And it's really, the first one is how well do you know your clients? But what are some of the challenges that you think clients can be facing attending an online session? I'd be very interested in that. So it's gonna be the same breakout rooms as before. I'm gonna ask different people when we come back just to comment on what the room said. And by the way, so your breakout room, the people you're in breakout room with, I'd like you to consider that they're gonna be your accountability partners when we leave. And I'll leave it up to you to connect, but there'll be a bit of a takeaway at the end for you to kind of move forward. So I'm gonna do the breakout rooms. I'm gonna do the 5-minute, 2-minute warning again. And so how well do you know your participants? But that's really the overarching question. But the second was, what are some of the challenges you think your clients or the people you're engaging with may be facing when it comes to, and we haven't spoken about any distractions yet. So, okay, so I'm going to open the rooms and I will see you shortly. Welcome back, everyone. There we go. Okay, so done this once before. I'm very curious to see what the discussions were like, and I will of course go to different people. Marilyn, do you mind sharing?
Sure.
Oh, there you go. Great.
How well we know our participants vary because we had the professor, so Brenda knows her students, of course. We get them over time, but then and Lauren also had some consistent participants in sessions, but the sessions for me, I do that would be different from time to time. Also in our group is Gail, and she had some consistency as well. So it really depends, as if you're an internal or external facilitator, how well we know our participants. And then it was Lauren had raised the point of having your story, so people sharing their story in advance, and so that's an opportunity to get to know people. Some of the challenges certainly was the technology skill and expertise. So the technology itself, where some people have really old computers and that there's no camera, and then there's other individuals who are very proficient and other people who have no idea. So sort of a real cross section.
It's a good,
getting people comfortable right from the beginning. Okay, this might be a little bit basic for you, but others are kind of struggling, so just get them on that same page right at the beginning. So
that's really good. I can tell you, once a day I'm on mute when I'm talking.
Yeah.
So after all this time, it's like, oh my, you think eventually I would learn. Well, thank you. How about room 2, Lena Malik? There you go.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, so we felt that if you're within the organization, you would know your audience very well. However, if you're a consultant or working outside, you need to unearth as much as possible. And Diane mentioned, that there was one meeting where no matter how much homework was done, it still got hijacked. So I think as facilitators, we need to be prepared to be a good facilitator on our feet, to be able to manage the unexpected, no matter if you do not know your audience. And then we just felt the challenges were the distraction of being super tired and in back to back to back meetings, and people are just tired, they're fatigued, they've had enough. And beyond the distractions of maybe the dog and the kids and everything else, you know, the ability to get the mind share. And so we had a really good chat that maybe you have to be willing to say this agenda isn't important right now, or it's not a priority, and we're going to give you some time back and maybe spend a little bit of time on relationship building and trust building. And then people may stay behind and you let them go and really focus on what's important.
That's great. I love the term manage the unexpected too. I mean, that to me, that's perfect. I recently, with a large group of people with strong technical backgrounds, I did a breakout room and I just said, you know, just go in and connect with each other and talk. And they actually came back. They were all energized. It was kind of fun. And interesting enough, when they went back in, they kept talking about that. And so we had to get them back. But anyways, thank you. That's really, I love that. That's really, really good. Pam, do you mind sharing?
Sure, no problem. So we touched on some of the things that were mentioned, is kind of that multiple distractions. So whether that's phone, email, you know, Teams chat, being at home. So maybe having, you know, your husband walk by, or dog, kids, and things of that nature. I know some of the people on my team talked about being in a retail environment. So there's just the natural noise of the workplace.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then personality. So we talked a little bit about like introversion versus extroversion. So knowing your audience and having an understanding of that. Fact-based versus discussion-based. So people who enjoy talking about facts and having data versus those who might want to just discuss and come to different conclusions. And that speaks to the diversity piece in terms of people are uniquely different. And then last but not least, I think we talked about pulling in technology. So for example, when you put up an exercise, grab your phone, take a picture of it, and you can use it in your breakout room, using it to Google, or search, like go to this website and look for this information. So using the technology to kind of support the learning.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thanks. And one last room, if I can go to Carolina Rojas. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I can see it though.
Yeah, you pronounced it correctly the first time. It's
Okay,
Carolina.
Okay.
So in terms of knowing the audience, we spoke about what things are important enough to share during the online session versus what are the things that can be shared ahead of time or via email or in other discussions. We also spoke about kind of having different presentation ways or different presentations for different groups, for the group that you interact usually with, for the group that you don't know so much, so you need to give them more information, kind of in terms of knowing the audience. In terms of the challenges, we did talk about, like pretty much the other groups, technical challenges. We've overcome lots of it, but there are still some. And Glenna was sharing with us a situation where even though they did a dress rehearsal, when it came to the day, something just happened. Something goes off, right? So it's the things that we can't control about technology. So we've overcome the things that we can. Mute, unmute. Took me a while to unmute, but that's me.
Me too.
Yes, like, where's my unmute? Where? But then there is the other things, the other pieces of technology that you cannot control. And then the distraction as a facilitator, or distraction as a participant, or other distractions that come in.
Those are very good.
Same as what the other groups were saying.
That's a great list. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that. I know we're getting close to the end of time. I just want to kind of wrap it up here. But before I do, consider that the breakout rooms, that you may have met the people in your rooms for the first time. Think of them as some people you can reach out to and expand your network. And you've shared some information. And why not over the next week or two, just reach out and and reach out and then talk to them. I just have a couple of slides up there I just want to share, and I think it's the really exciting, important part of what's going on. Now, the first thing is around, this is some data, once again, that we're capturing. So 80% of organizations say online platforms will play a major role in development. I think it's going to be higher, to be honest, and but it's not going away. It's going to be dramatic. As a matter of fact, we're planning things for spring of next year, winter, and it's all still, very few people want face-to-face yet. So, I mean, I don't know what it's going to look like, honestly don't, but I think it's going to be interesting. Now, the positive thing, I think, is some things that I'm experiencing. And, there's a lot of benefits to, using the technology, capturing data, but there's no more territorial boundaries. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never done anything for a cross-country audience before all of this. Now, almost everything I do is cross-country. As a matter of fact, I'm doing something on Thursday with participants from Australia. And, so to me, there's an incredible opportunity to of course, to expand the business component of this. The second thing too, now all of a sudden, where before you might have done something in Alberta, something in Ontario, Quebec, whatever it is, now you get this cross-country blend, and you get diversity. And I mean, I just think the opportunities are exponential if you're doing any type of facilitation or work. I used to often hear, well, there's travel restrictions or that those are gone. And I'm surprised, to be honest, because I didn't think I'd feel this way, 15 months ago, but now I'm quite energized by it. I can, just put on a nice shirt, wear a pair of shorts, and deliver something. Now I know that my content, it's not going to be longer than 90 minutes. I'm really focused on that. I'm 60 to 90 minutes. I'm just doing maybe more sessions. The participation rate is higher now. More people are coming to sessions. Just did something recently where we had like 90% of the employees attend something. Would have never happened before. We would have never been able to do that, to get them all in the same room together. So I think there's an awful lot of positives when it comes to this. I mean, the technology piece is going to be around, and it's going to be a challenge for sure. I think it's getting better. And there's a level of expertise is certainly going up with the people that are joining in, but I don't know. I think it's, and I guess I want to come back to who had said this. I think, well, it's been a message throughout. It's about that adaptability, and Marilyn, I know you had mentioned that, but I mean, it's about being adaptable and understanding that if the sessions don't go as planned, people are okay with that too. Like the expectations, like, hey, there's a technology issue. It's like, okay, well, there is, like, it happens. So we can definitely change it. So I just want to say once again, just so much fun to be in front of everybody. And I know your network is very, it's a very important part of sharing information. And hopefully this has helped a little bit. It's an ongoing discussion. From a work business perspective, we have never seen more opportunities because of this. Where, even recently, something that we're looking at doing something way up north, which, never happened because, there's so much cost involved in travel and issues like that. So anyways, I'm pretty bullish on the whole thing, and I'm still trying to hone my skills as a online presenter, but, hopefully one day when I'm retired, I'll master it after that. But just once again, thank you, Brenda, for the invite to speak to the group today. And thank you, Carla, for all the help you provided. And if you have any questions at all, if I can provide anything, let me know. I will send the deck to Carla for distribution. And there you go.
Thank you so much, Steve. Well, it's always a pleasure, and we love having you as a speaker. And I've learned a lot, little nuggets, and I think just the sharing aspect has been so great, and it's one of the things I love about SCN.
Can I share one last thing?
Sure.
So on Friday is unofficially Better Human Day. And you'll see a posting tomorrow. And all we're asking people to do is do something to make the world a better place. So think of Friday as a way to do it.
Thank you.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
It's a very honorable goal. I'm going to try to think about what I'm going to do.
No, and we have a list of things too. We have 6 things you can
Oh.
pick from, but you can do your own thing too. So watch for
Okay.
it'll go on LinkedIn tomorrow to our social media
Awesome.
campaign. So thank you very
Yeah.
much, everybody. And I'm going to leave and take care.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Hi,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again for this session. I just wanted to also put your attention to the poll. We do read all the feedback, so please take just a second to complete the poll. And also, if you have any suggestions, please let us know if there's any challenges or topics that you want us to find speakers about. Steve left, but did want to say that we are donating to his charity, which is Big Brother and Sisters of Calgary, and that's now part of the Trellis Society, who does a lot of the sort of family network stuff. I do want to tell you about our bonus session, which I think a lot of you will be interested in. It is on June 24th in understanding the impacts of ESG of your business, and that will be presented by Pat Lepowski and Anisha Chakravorty. If you don't know what ESG is, Google it right after the session. It's something you need to know. It's going to be part of legislation. It's the new thing. All organizations are going to have to be updated on it and know about it and be proficient in it. So please do consider joining us for the June 24th bonus session. Otherwise, thank you again for joining us, and I hope to see you in future SCN events. Thank you, everyone.